I start the recording and give the word to Lucia or Ron if you want to say something else. Enjoy.
Okay, thank you. And yes, as Caroline has said, good morning everyone, and welcome to our third webinar organized by Laura in collaboration with Lursail and Avere as Basque Country advisory entities and partners of this project, Presidents for Dairy. And as you have said, today we have with us Lucia Diez from the Spanish Association of Beef Producers. And in this webinar, she will share the next step need to achieve some goals in this carbon farming and sustainability. So, Lucia, when you want.
Okay, thank you very much, John, for the kind presentation. Let me see if this works as good as it did before. So, can you see the presentation?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks again for the invitation, and many thanks for counting on ASOPROVAC for this webinar. I know they are very interesting pieces of information, and I'm very happy to be here and to share with you what we are doing and our point of view. So the plan for today, I'm going to just for you to have a brief outlook of what we are going to do. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit who we are and why we are here. Then I will talk a little bit about the live carbon farming project, in which Laura is one of our partners. And later on, we will mention a little bit what is happening now and the next step in Europe, and in particular in the case of Spain. So let's start from what we are, who we are, right? So ASOPROVAC, as already my colleagues mentioned, is the Spanish Beef Association of Beef Producers. We work in Spain, and we are the main association of these characteristics, let's say, representing more than 70% of the whole production in the country. We have 4 delegations in our the most important regions, and we are usually representing them in front of the administration, and we are very keen on the topic of sustainability. And maybe you might ask why we are so into sustainability. Well, I guess that most of you have heard about the livestock long shadow. This was a comprehensive report published by the Food and Agriculture Organization in 2006. And in this report, they examined the environmental impact of livestock globally, right? And they highlighted the contributions of the sector, especially to greenhouse gas emissions, and also other areas like land, water, and biodiversity. So this report really put the sector in the spotlight and had a profound impact on global discussions about agriculture, and particularly livestock, within the legislative, let's say, approach that the whole world, and mainly Europe in our case, is taking. So this report has influenced policies and also other initiatives that you are probably aware of. Anything that has to do with environmental footprint and livestock farming. So this is the, let's say, start point from sustainability and livestock, and why we actually started this journey. Well, we realized when this report came out that we didn't have real data about the real impact of our activity and how to improve it, because if we didn't know like the start point, we could not know how to make things better, right? And the other thing that was very important for us as an association of farmers was that we really think that cattle farmers must be part of the strategy against climate change. And here I just highlight some points that I think are very important for this, considering that, for example, cattle farmers are providers of organic manure. Currently, it's estimated that 50% of fertilizers globally are organic. Then another important part of the farms, of cattle farms, are able to fight against fire. Then other important actions are carbon absorption and circular economy. And here, let me just give you a data that according to the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, without livestock, 30,000 tons of byproducts would become waste each year, and 2/3 of agricultural lands could not be utilized otherwise. So this is very important for the rural areas. And in addition, we know that rural population retention is another of the characteristics of this activity. So we think that this is the basement of what we need to do. Other important, let's say, elements to consider is that we understood that there was an inappropriate legislative approach, because it was not, let's say, a little bit partial. There was not a structured strategy. Of course, I mean, following this, there was no appropriate funding to help farmers to improve or to enhance their activity and to the measurements they could implement it. And I also need to say that many times we need to also fight against the let's say the traditions and the deep barriers for change. So farmers, there are some of them still have many doubts of this journey towards sustainability. So taking all into account, is where Asoprovac started the journey. And here you can see several projects that we have been somehow related with since 2013. That is the first one that started that year. This carbon dairy is actually, this is a French project, so we did not participate on that, but we think that is the precursor of the rest of the projects. So in this initiative, it started again, I mentioned in 2013, they tried to reduce emissions in 6 regions of France. Then we have the beef carbon that I will mention in a little bit. Then the Bobby Green, which was a Spanish project for beef sector, and that was very, very useful for us, because within this project we were able to study a viable and reliable methodology for calculating carbon footprint under the Spanish conditions in beef. I mean, this is very important that we understand that beef and dairy have very, very different characteristics, and you will see it during the whole presentation. And then the last project I'm mentioning here is AdaptaVac, which was another Spanish project that we work in for the study of adaptation of the Spanish farms to climate change, which is another important pillar for climate change. We cannot forget that mitigation and carbon sequestration is important, but also we need to adapt to the new conditions. So let me tell you a little bit of the live beef carbon, which was actually like the earlier chapter of what we are doing now. So the live beef carbon project started in 2015 and ended up in 2021. It involved 2,000 farmers in 4 countries, France, Italy, Ireland, and Spain. And it was focused on beef, as its name named, actually. And we need to, I mean, it was very, very important because it represented the 33% of beef production in the European Union. In this project, 47 partners participated, and the goal was to reduce carbon footprint by 15% in beef production during the following 10 years. In this context, and some conclusions and deliverables that we can that we obtained from this project are the following. So the project allowed to evaluate the relationship between agricultural practices and greenhouse emissions reduction. I mean, the relationship, between these 2 elements, agricultural practices and the greenhouse gas emissions. Then we have a report per farm. So in total, 2,000 carbon footprint reports in the whole, within the whole participants. Some of these participants volunteer for being what we called innovative farms, and they not only measure their carbon footprint, but they also implemented some measurements and made a second carbon footprint audit at the very end of the project, which was actually what we are taking as an example for this new live project that I'm going to tell you afterwards. With this project, we demonstrated that the reduction potential of 15% was feasible for some farms. We got, importantly, tools harmonizations, development, and adaptation of a common methodology. And here, and probably you know, because eventually working with other countries, and you know for sure, is not always easy because we all have differences related to country and to production systems, and to try to find a common framework is something that is really, really challenging, and we were very happy that we could reach that point. And last but not least, this project was a first stone for the awareness raising. We need to somehow convince our farmers that this is the way to work. So these were the main achievements, let's say, for the project. And as some lessons that we learned from this initiative was, first of all, that there were needed, with this project, we did the audits, the carbon footprint audits in farms, but for going a step further beyond, we needed to know what if, right? So what if in this case, where I already know my carbon footprint, what if I implement this measurement, or do I do this other thing, right? So this is what we call the ex-ante calculations, and it was something needed to continue our improvement. We also needed to extend current analysis towards a life cycle analysis and also implement the scope 3 for the study of the emissions. We also needed to know that there were, so the absorption data under the Spanish conditions were not really understood. So we needed to, and actually we are working on that very, very deeply. Also, some additional indicators were needed regarding biodiversity, economic and social indicators. We also understood that there were few recognized best available techniques, and mainly they were not studied under the Spanish conditions. You will see that I'm going to put like the Spanish a lot of times, because I need to highlight that this is our point of view. So probably if this seminar would be held in, I mean, from another country, this would be different. And then lastly, we also found some obstacles to the implementation of collective projects for sustainability improvement. So with this, so now you already have the whole picture of where we were before starting the project I'm going to present now, which is the live carbon farming project. You will see that this project is much more ambitious in its goal than the previous one, the live beef carbon, and that it aims not only the reduction of emissions, but also the creation of a real framework for the future. As you can see here, the goals of this project is to develop and implement rewarding mechanisms for carbon farming in cattle production. In this case, we also wide, let's say, the scope, because we are studying beef and dairy farms. And the mission, let's say, is to build a real networking by bringing together different stakeholders, including not only the sector, farmers and retailers, in industry, etc., but also other economic actors that would help in the implementation of the system in the whole chain value. How, like in more in detail, how we would achieve these goals. So first, we needed to develop harmonized standards and tools. This work, as you might remember, started in the previous project. We also train technicians to implement low carbon projects. We plan also to evaluate implementation costs, and this is the first step for building a real framework in the future, as you will see. We also plan to implement and disseminate rewarding mechanisms and strategies, as well as create and structure and promote a European framework and network, meaning that this particular project is not only reducing emissions, which is already a lot, and you probably know this, but we also want to really work for the establishment of a framework that allows us to take all this work for further actions. So here I show you a little bit how we are distributing. The live carbon farming is taking place in 6 countries. In this case is France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Ireland, and Spain. In here we have also 50 farmers, 50 partners and 700 farmers. In this case, also there are some some farms are also mixed, meaning that they have also crops and other species. And in the case of Spain, we are focused on bovine, both beef and dairy, as I mentioned before, and these are our partners. You can see Lorra there, which is one of our partners, as I mentioned. So in here, just for you to know, like the very simple scheme of the project. We consider this really an opportunity to develop rewarding mechanisms for carbon farming. So we establish the basis for that. Particularly in this project, we analyze the carbon footprint of the farm, then elaborate an action plan together with the farmer to reduce that carbon footprint. We track the process, and what we want to really be the new thing. Let's say we want to certify the avoided CO2 equivalent tons, as well as work for the rewarding mechanisms, most probably the carbon credits compensation. So just very briefly, I'm going to talk a little bit of this tool of the bovine CO2, because probably working in dairy, you are mostly familiar with the Cap de Serre. So I'm going to present you just very briefly our tool, which is specific for Spain. This tool was a work that we performed together with another of our partners, which is Naked, which is also from Basque Country, actually. And just for you to have an image of what we measure, I'm going to show you an example of a report of our tool. So here you can see it's in Spanish. I'm sorry, but it's just for you to know what we are working with. So you can see, I don't know, I cannot show you the pointer, but so you can see here that we work with the characteristics of the farm and the characteristics of the livestock, what the positive contribution of the farm is in terms of biodiversity and also protein production, as our main mission, the main mission of a farmer is to feed people eventually. And then you can see the distribution of the emissions. And we do think that this is a very visual tool that can really put the focus on what is the most important in each case. The second part of the report would be the carbon plan, let's say. It's the action plan where we want to act. These are just, in this example, some of the main actions for reduction and what the risks are, or the most difficult part are. So going back to the general scheme, I already mentioned the first two, let's say, and we are now working together with the farmers and the advisors to implement this action plan, and we are also waiting for tracking the process and to continue with the whole process. Then the certify of avoided CO2 equivalent tons and the carbon credit composition. I'm not going to dive into the detail because this is still a very ongoing job, but I'm going to to tell you a little bit of what we are taking as an example, especially for the certification part. I'm pretty sure that you know the France Carbon Agri, so I'm not going to waste to spend a lot of time in this, but just for those that are not familiar with this is a pioneer initiative to promote transition, and it refers to the specific approach implemented in France to measure and manage carbon emissions in the agricultural sector. It's actually is part of a broader efforts to integrate sustainable agriculture into climate change mitigation, as it is aligned with other policies and strategies, according to what we know. So just as like a scheme for you to understand, the first part would be to actually the work together from farmers and advisors to understand and to measure the carbon footprint and the implementation of techniques. Then there is an external auditor which certify that this methodology is correct. In here, it's regarding the labeling process. They have a very, very important advantage, which is that the ministry also certifies those projects that have this label of the Label Bas Carbone. Then I put this order just to make it clearer, but it goes somehow all together, right? So the France Carbon Agri, which is what we would call the aggregator, is the one that put together all the information and coordinate the whole job. And then a very important part also, which is what they call here the contributors, which are the stakeholders eventually, right? So they are the ones that found and put the value of all this job. And according to the France Carbon Agri Association, these are the data during the last years. And as you can see, the number of agricultures, as well as the number of tons of CO2 equivalents, let's say like worked, were increasing each year. And so this is a very promising progression, and that's why we want to take this as an example. They do have, and actually this is a personal opinion, but what I think it's very interesting and it's a real the real strength of this system is that there are many actors supporting this activity. So there is the retailers, there are the whole the whole chain is very, very keen on this type of job and this orientation, including from the farmer to, as I mentioned, the retailers. And very importantly, the policymakers also support this. So this is the way to act according to, in my view, because this is the only way that we can do that a huge challenge like this could work. So I just mentioned the projects, what we are working on, and the example that we want to, let's say that we look up in France, and let's see a few slides of what is happening in Europe. this is going to be very brief, but as I'm most interested in sharing what happens in Spain, as I guess that is the most interesting for you and the newest part. So regarding European legislation, the main thing to know in this context is that Europe aims to become carbon neutral by 2050. And this is a goal, and we need to figure out how to reach that, right? So one of the laws that they are working on, is the carbon removals. So in this year, actually, they reach a provisional agreement on the first EU-wide voluntary framework for the certification of high-quality carbon removals. And their main concern is the transparency and the trust. So according to their own information, these are the main objectives that they have, and the main focus of this law, let's say. Another important directive in this case to take into consideration is the Directive 2022/2464, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which in this case, and again you can see here, it aims to require EU companies to report on sustainability, enhancing transparency, and standardizing the provided information. So once again, trust and transparency. Just to mention that this directive goes a step beyond the previous directive, which was the non-financial information one. And here you can see some of the new, the main points of this legislation. Just for, that it sounds familiar for you. It expanded the scope related to the previous one. So it covers a wider range of companies. It's mandatory to have an independent audit. And once again, transparency and also digitalization. I guess that they understand that digital tools are more trustable somehow, I guess. And here you can see two call of attention, that is for the small non-listed companies. And they don't have the they don't have the obligation of do this type of reports, but there is a voluntary approach for them, which actually may allow them to meet the sustainability requirements and working in towards more sustainable management, but without imposing unnecessary regulatory burdens. So this will come in the next few years. That just for you to have another piece of information. Another important law is the Industrial Emissions Directive. Probably again you might have heard of it, especially if you work with pigs or poultry. And here they are now setting up the new, like the updated version, let's say. So they are reviewing the previous directive, and they already mentioned. We as a cattle association, we had a very close look at at this directive, because there were this thought that cattle might be included in this revision, and actually no. But I already heard that the Commission will decide, will evaluate again if including for including cattle in the end of 2026. So, eventually, probably cattle would be also included in this type of legislation. So this was like a brief review of the European legislation, but let me just focus on Spain and of bovine farms. First of all, I need to tell you that well, Spain is different. This is like the typical topic. The typical thing that we all said, but in this case is sort of real, because we have a very unique production system, as other countries have. Especially, dairy is much more uniform with their own characteristics, for sure, depending on the country, but beef depends so much in the environmental characteristics that is very adaptive. They're very well adapted to the conditions, and so it happens in Spain. So one of the main characteristics in our case is that not always cattle farms are land-based, which is a surprise for people from other countries, and it's very highly specialized. So it's very, very efficient. Usually the feeding part, and as it is not land-based, we need to feed them with let's say other formulations. And the related to this not land-based characteristic, for us is extremely important to consider mitigation in for being recognized. Absorption, for absorption, usually you have the land, so carbon sequestration, and that's very important, and this is like the main focus from the legislative point of view. But we are very interested in mitigation, as we do think that mitigation is also part of the strategy for carbon removals, and is the main action that our farmers could work in their farms. So this is one of the most important part. I want you to get it clear. In Spain, indeed, we have. We are a little bit further than the European legislation in the beef part. In the bovine sector, because recently in 2022. There was this law, the Royal Decree of Planning, I don't know exactly how to translate it, of the bovine farming sector. And there is a whole article for reduction of emissions, which is very important because it gives some instructions for some of the categories of farms to implement some techniques for reducing their carbon footprint. And to do so, they published the list of best available techniques by the ministry. Just to have an idea of what I'm talking about, these best available techniques are focused on the mitigation and reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. And there are 3 pillars to work with. as I guess is mostly everywhere. First is feeding, then is animal housing, and then is manure storage. And this, it's going to be by the end of the 2025. It's going to be mandatory to have this. Depending on if they are. If they need to do some constructions or not in the farms, but by December of 2025, most farms with these particular characteristics need to have this type of techniques implemented. Another important thing that I need to mention is the work that our interventions is doing. We are part of ProVacuno, which is, let's say, like the Interweb from Spain. And we work together with them in the sustainability area. First, for increasing the list of best available techniques, because even though we already have the list, this is very, very reduced for our case, and is, it is too, there are too few techniques. They actually recently started a project for improving carbon removals in land, which is one important project they achieved this year. And we also work together to promote private initiatives from the sector, because again, we need to find funding for farmers, and we need to help them either by public or by private initiatives to improve and to be more sustainable. So I hope that with this I gave you a picture of what we are doing. And just for finishing, let me just tell you that we are still, this is an ongoing work, and it will last for many years. I'm pretty sure of that. And we keep on generating knowledge. There are still some, let's say, dark holes, and we need to put the light. We keen on trying to change these two legislative focus, and we want to promote, as I just mentioned with ProVacuno, on private initiatives. We also work in addressing the request from retailers that they are already asking our farmers to what their conditions are in terms of sustainability, and especially related to this directive that I mentioned, the Corporative Sustainable Reporting Directive. We also work in training advisors, in developing rewarding mechanisms, and in allowing other companies to invest in improving Spanish rural environment sustainability. Because eventually this is not only let's say, I don't know how to say, it's not only a job, or it's not only a good idea to be sustainable, but it actually impacts in people's life, and especially in the rural areas. So it's really important that there are investment in these areas. And to do so, one of the things that we do is to work in this type of projects. I explained today a little bit of the carbon farming, and we are also involved in the climate farm demo. I don't know if any of you are there, but it's another very ambitious project in Europe. In this case, it's an Horizon project, and somehow this is moving. So yeah, I hope you found it interesting, the presentation, and many thanks for your attention. Many thanks again for inviting us and to consider Asoprovac as an interesting stakeholder, let's say, for you. If you have any question, I'm happy to take it. And you can, I mean, if you have, I didn't actually put it here, but if you have any question for this or something related, please don't hesitate to ask maybe John for our email account. I would be very happy to help you if in case you need anything.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Are there any questions? Then please just raise your hand or write it in the chat. Or some other comments.
Here from Laura, we have one question related with the Resins for Dairy project. In this project, we are working with various solutions: environmental, socioeconomic, animal welfare. And to now, if we concentrate in the environmental field, and with your experience, Lucia, which measure do you think could be the most effective to implement or the most difficult in the long term?
That is a good question, because this harmonizing tries, let's say, it's always a good idea. Well, first I need to mention again the variability that we have. I'm not a dairy person, let's say, but in my understanding, the dairy cattle is much more harmonized and standardized within the whole country and also within Europe, right? However, beef is much more different. And regarding the country, and as I mentioned, even here in Spain, it has nothing to do with the north with the south or the east or to the west. So it's very, very variable. First thing I would say is the main focus for both of us, let's say, is to improve efficiency, because the most efficiency we are, the better. And so for the short term, answering your question, one of the most important thing would be to work with is the feeding, because our first we already have some data from our partners, and mostly the let's say the amount of emissions related to feeding are the higher, right? So in the case, for example, for beef, it would be to increase to balance, but to better balance the concentrate, to give more higher energy, and to adjust protein would be the best one. And we also think that maybe for dairy it would be interesting the use of inhibitors, methane inhibitors, which are already available for, at least for dairy. We don't have for beef, but I think that this is important. And for the long term, I guess that the most interesting and most difficult one would be to improve the genetics, because in dairy farms we have the Holstein and others, right? But it's like the iconic cow. In beef we don't have that it's much more variable, and especially in Spain we have a lot of origin denomination. I don't know exactly what's the name, but we worked a lot with the different races, if I may use that word. And we think that genetics, if we would be able to work to improve the genetic of the species, it would really be one of the main spotlights to improve sustainability, and is probably the most difficult one, but an important one. And yeah, I think that would be my reply.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? There's one from Anthony. Are Spanish farmers being paid yet for reducing emissions?
Well, thanks for your question, Anthony. Not really. So that would be the short answer. Not really. We are in the framework of this project. We are working for establishing these rewarding mechanisms, and we do think that we will reach that point, and especially we are working especially in the carbon credits, but we are still working on that. So far, by my understanding, there is no. I mean, still, this is not a paid activity, unfortunately, and we do think that unless this is, I mean, they really need to see the advantage. It's true that when you work with them, I mean, one of the we are the ones that has to put in value our job, right? Because the assessment per se is a very good thing to, like, as a compensation thing, but is not like is not so like that. But also, so it happens that many of the measurements of the proposed techniques that we want to implement, they improve the productivity. So eventually, if the animals is what I mentioned when I answered John's question, that if you are able to improve your efficiency, I mean, you will improve your economical pillar, right? So if we are able to implement techniques that are not only good for the pillar of environmental sustainability, but also for the economical pillar, I think that they will see it as a positive thing, not only like oh, I need to. I mean, this is a cost for me. No, we need to see it to sell them that this is an opportunity, and actually it is. So the question is no, but hopefully we will reach that.
Okay, I think that, or I hope that was an answer enough. Otherwise, Anthony, please just say something. Any other comment? If not, then I would thank you, Lucia, for the interesting presentation, for taking time for us for the webinar. Yeah, you got some contact information so people can also write you or write to Ron if there are some other questions.
Yeah, I can write in the chat the email account of the association in case anyone wants to have another, I mean, they have another question or something they want from us. We are happy to help. And otherwise, again, just just talk to Caroline or John, and I will provide any information I can.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much, and have a nice day.
Yes,
Bye.
same.
Bye.